Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic today, Tim. This episode coming up is the continuation of the virtual fundraiser that we did just a little while ago, and we raised a couple of $1,000s for our nonprofit, Private Investigations for the Missing. You can get all of that information over at investigationsforthemissing.org, and you can continue to donate there. Like we always say, every little bit goes a long way, and that is such an honest statement. And it was proven the night of the fundraiser. But Tim, prove to me how you're doing today. You look okay. Are you feeling good? How are you?
Feeling good, yeah. Very excited to air part 2 here of our virtual fundraiser. We hope you enjoy it. This is Dr. Trey Sargent, and then a quick cameo from private investigator Jason Watts. And then we've got Greg Overacker and Lou Barry, who are both seasoned private investigators, and they join in the last segment to tell us about the disappearance of Brianna Maitland, and really some new news in that case. So definitely want to stick around to the end to hear all that and consider what the new facts, sort of what they do to the old facts in the case.
Yeah, right. That's a good way to put it. How does that contribute to what we already know or what we already have theorized about Brianna's disappearance? And this came to us in real time. So when everyone was hearing this for the first time, everybody who had joined virtually, and those of you listening now, the reaction that Tim and I had was they were genuine reactions because we had never been told this before. And again, yeah, I don't know on where I would rank it on how legitimate or how seriously we should be taking it, but it certainly feels good because you know why? Lou and Greg decided to tell us about it. And that should tell you a lot. If this wasn't something, they wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, and apparently they had to get permission, or at least gave the information to the Vermont State Police that they were going to be sharing it publicly. So, yeah, definitely interesting and new information for the public in Brianna Maitlin's case. Yeah. Okay, everybody, we're going to take a quick break for commercial here, and we're going to be right back with Dr. Trey Sargent. Please follow us on social media at Missing CSM. And hey, check us out on Spotify or YouTube. You get full video there. Thanks a lot for listening. Let's invite Dr. Trace Sargent in here right now. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well. Thank you so much.
We're doing awesome. We had the pleasure to meet you and your dogs before we started the live stream, and you're a very lucky person because they seem like amazing beings, and you are very accomplished, and I would love you to introduce yourself to the audience and give a bit of a background on what you do.
Yes, Lance. My name is Tracy Sargent. Most people know me as Trace. I have a PhD in psychology with the emphasis of criminology. I am a criminal profiler. I am a law enforcement officer as well as an EMT, firefighter, emergency management, and of course a dog handler and a master trainer. I have been involved in missing person cases for over 30 years. I've been involved in probably over 2,000 cases now. Many of those are cold cases, difficult cases that I've worked over the years. And then of course, fugitive cases, missing children, Alzheimer's, hikers, plane crashes, drownings, pretty much any scenario that you can think of that somebody would go missing that I've worked. And all of these have been done with the incredible, amazing abilities of these canines that we truly do not deserve dogs. And I'm so privileged and honored to be a partner with these amazing animals to help us with these incredible stories of families and the challenges that they go through.
And we're definitely going to get into more of that, but also on your bio, it says that you do Civil War and Revolutionary War work. And that led us to kind of question, what is that? Like, do descendants from Civil War soldiers contact you to look at battlegrounds to see if there's remains of their like ancestors?
Well, yes, they do. What's really fascinating about that, when you think about cold cases, most people will think about a homicide case or maybe a mystery. They don't really think about these battlefields, but in essence, it is a cold case, just a cold case that's 150, 250, 300 years old. We do get contacted by archaeologists and even descendants of these brave men that fought for our country. And what really opened up my eyes when I started this was an archaeologist contacted me many years ago for the Revolutionary War battlefield site. It was here in Georgia. And I have to say to you, Lance and Tim, and to the listeners that it's one thing to go into a museum and look at the artifacts and read about, history and what happened, but to actually walk the grounds of where these men fought and many of them died for our country is a whole different feeling, especially when you have an archaeologist standing there next to you. In my situation, he leans over, he looks down on the ground and he picks something up and he starts talking about this musket ball that he picked up. And he said, yes, this is from the Patriots, which is the Americans, and this is from the British, and so on and so forth. And then we talk about the Civil War, which people are very familiar with. And to walk the grounds of where history happened, it's a totally different feeling. And when I was first asked this, again, Revolutionary War, about 235, 40 years old. And I said, sir, we don't train for 250-year-old remains. But I tell you what, if you don't tell the dogs, I won't tell the dogs, and let's see what happens. And that's how that began. And it winded up being an incredible, amazing endeavor. There's been a huge report and a number of articles and reports written about it. And from there, the word got out that these dogs can, in fact, and help in those what we call historical type projects. So I've done a number of those through the years, and many of them here in the South. So in essence, what I've learned in this situation, that dogs, you really can't hide scent from them. It doesn't matter how old or how, with all due respect, fresh the scent might be. If the scent is there, they will pick it up.
That's amazing. Yeah, we've heard about cadaver dogs searching from a boat, but a person in the water. That was pretty shocking to me. So there's no age, no water is not a barrier. Well, that's pretty amazing. I mean, if we didn't already not deserve dogs for their personalities, we really don't deserve them for their search abilities.
Absolutely. And I would say, and add to the historical, back story of doing these type of things, is that I had to quickly really ignore roads and trees and buildings and things of that sort, because so many things have changed over the years. So it was not unusual for the dogs to actually alert to a tree or alert to the middle of a road or something like that, versus, let's say, a homicide case. That would be very unlikely. So I even had to approach it differently. And then looking at the science of it and understanding what scent does and the environment and how that is impacted over the years, what I advise the archaeologists and what we call GPR operators, ground penetrating radar operators, and other subject matter experts that are involved in these kind of projects, is that when you look at, let's say, a homicide case or a missing person case that's been missing for weeks, months, or even a few years, where the dogs alert, oftentimes X marks the spot. But with historical projects, which I advise is about a 50-foot radius of where the dogs alert. Because when you, let's say, for example, a soldier is killed, a tree grows right there, it grows up. Well, in essence, we are made up primarily of fluids. So that tree actually absorbs those cadaver fluids. And we've actually seen dogs do this. They alert to trees and bushes. Well, With that, if you talk about the root system and the depth of the soil, so to speak, that oftentimes that scent is going to be dispersed by that tree some distance. So that is another difference that we've recognized and really have learned over the years working with those kind of very specialized type projects.
This is really fascinating to me and to Tim as well, because when we started looking into Maura Murray's disappearance, we had heard rumors about cadaver dogs searching different locations and how people made up their own rules about how a cadaver dog like reacts when they come in contact with an area that might have a deceased individual. And I remember this like infamous quote. It's not infamous in the grand sense of the world, but like in my head, it's infamous because someone had said, "Oh, went to this certain location and the dog like went bonkers or whatever. Like the dog went nuts." And then when we worked with cadaver dogs with scent dog like search dogs, they don't go bonkers. Like they don't when there's a hit, they lay down, they get calm, like they sit, like they stop. And it just like put a lot of things into perspective. It was like really a transformative moment in looking into these cold cases, because all my perception was that when a cadaver dog gets a scent, it goes nuts because of one comment that I read. And then I find out, no, it's going to circle, it's going to act off, and then it's going to probably sit down, it's going to lay down, like, and that's just remarkable to me.
Yes, and I think it's important for listeners to know that cadaver dogs tell us two things every time we use them. They tell us where something is and where something isn't. And what I've learned over the years, knowing where something isn't is just as important and helpful in a case than where something is. Of course, we want to find what we're looking for, but it's very often we go on these searches and it's a process of elimination. There's one case I worked, we checked 28 different places for this gentleman, and we found him on the last location, which was number 29. Which was great because as these tips and leads came in, we could quickly check the area and tell law enforcement officials, guys, I don't know where he is, but I can tell you he's not here. And with the limited resources and other variables that are so challenging in these cases, that's a really helpful thing to know. And when people ask, well, how many people or bodies or remains have your dogs found? And I said, well, that's not really an accurate question and what these dogs do for us. That case, for example, the dogs were right 29 out of 29 times, but they only found one body. So they were very effective in that search. So with that, you're right, Lance. When we do work these cadaver dogs, we're actually very stealthy, so to speak. The dogs are very focused. They do their job, and when they find what they're looking for, in this case, human remains scent, they will sit. Now, the important part to note about that is that the dogs are part of several things. One, they're part of the investigative team, but they're also a tool in the toolbox. So when a dog alerts to an area, I am stepping in and saying, why? Why did the dog alert here? Is it related to the case? Is it unrelated to the case? Does it have anything to do with what we're looking for? Or is it something that is totally innocent? We need to figure out why did the dog alert here and determine if it's important for us to, check into that further. There's been a number of times where we search in an area and the dogs respond, and I will tell them, this area is not cleared. It warrants further investigation to determine why the dogs did this. And then oftentimes it is very, very important evidence that is discovered by the dog's responses in that area. It's not like Hollywood. Sometimes it is. Let me back up. Let me take that back. There's a few occasions it is like Hollywood, but more often than not, it's not an obvious thing. So let me say, for example, this week I'm on call for a murder trial for a murder that happened last August. This husband shot and killed his wife. And long story short, they had been there for about 10 hours processing the scene inside the house. They found blood. They didn't know whose it was. They really didn't know who was missing, who wasn't. So there were still a lot of unanswered questions. So before they released the scene, and it was a very nice home and a very nice part of this city where this occurred, it's not something that happens very often. So they said, Tracy, before we release the scene, we want to, kind of cover all of our bases and make sure there's not something here that we missed. So we arrived there, and within just minutes, and I will show the dog in just a moment, he responded. And there were multiple debris piles in the backyard where they were clearing a wooded area. And there were, I dare say, probably a dozen debris piles or more there. And I told the law enforcement officers, check this debris pile and this one only. The others are clear. So when they did that, guess what they found? They found the wife's body had been burned. She was shot and killed and buried under that debris. So that's a perfect example. And the murder trial is happening this week. So my point of that is these dogs answer so many questions for us. Sometimes we don't even know what those questions are. But I would dare say, especially in these high profile cases and cold cases, if it has not been checked by a dog team, the area has not been cleared. Because oftentimes what these dogs do for us, if it's something that we can't see and visibly clear with our own eyes, then the dogs are a great resource and tool for that. There's so many examples of what these dogs do for us. And you mentioned about water. Yes, dogs can find people underwater, and it's actually very easy for them. And I will be happy to explain that if you want me to, on why it's easy for them to do that.
Yeah, I think the audience here has a lot of questions. We had Barbara talk about the olfactory amplification of the dogs. Christopher was talking about the concrete burial, how they can pick up a scent there. So I guess I'm going to try to combine the questions here. Is the way that they can pick up a cadaver in water the same as the way that they would pick up a cadaver in a concrete burial?
In some ways, yes. So I imagine most of your listeners have been in water deep enough where you go deep and it's cold. And then as you come to the surface, it gets warmer and then even quite warm or hot at the surface. So think about scent as a living organism. So scent is going to be pulled or drawn to heat. So the body's underwater, that scent is actually going to go to the surface. So the scent is actually coming above the water and the dogs can detect it that way. The huge challenge about water recovery is this. We cannot see how the currents and the topography and the debris and all of those things are underwater. So if we have, say, for example, and this actually happened not too long ago in a case we worked, we were in a river and the dog actually alerted, and I said, well, we need to look upstream because the scent was coming downstream. So when we did, we saw this tree that the dog actually tried to get out of the boat and go to. So I had to hold on to him, and when we looked in the tree, that's where the person was. So it's about the currents, and it's just a lot more difficult underwater. Whereas on land, oftentimes where the dog's alert, X marks the spot. The difference would be, and I advise law enforcement officials about this, if a dog alerts on the side of a hill, I always look uphill visually and take the dog uphill because oftentimes the scent's going to be coming downhill. So that's the big difference there. And then again, of course, the historical projects, we do a lot larger radius because scent does move over the years because of the trees and things. Taz, come here. Taz, here.
Yeah, can we meet your friend here?
Get him up there. Yeah.
What's funny is that he's never allowed on furniture, so I had to actually encourage him to get on the furniture earlier. Come on, Taz, up. Come on, up. Here is Taz. Come here, Taz. Come here. I'm going to have to scoot over since. Here, Taz. Here. Come here. Sit. Up. Come on. Oh, come here. Sit up.
He's camera shy.
No, he's not. He's just. Come here. Up. It's just kind of crowded for us.
Oh, my.
Stay. Come here.
Stop it. Look at him.
No, I'm trying. Hang on. Let me. Come here, Taz. Look. I'm trying. Let me get the camera there. Okay, there he is.
Hey,
oh my God.
How you doing?
Oh my. Hey, Taz. Look at you,
up,
you handsome son of a bee.
Wow.
Wow. That's a handsome
Very
dog.
handsome.
Well, let me tell you a great thing about him. He actually was almost euthanized.
No.
Yes, that is correct. So what we believe is that he was a pandemic pound puppy. During the pandemic, everybody got the puppies and all the cute dogs and all of that. And then, of course, we assume that he was probably, adopted as a puppy, but he winded up in a high kill shelter when he was about 12 to 14 months old. And a friend of mine actually told me about him because I was looking for a new dog because one of my other dogs had recently retired. So I went to go and evaluate him and took him home. And he's been an amazing, incredible partner that we've literally been all over the country. He's been in Montana, Texas, California, Tennessee, Georgia, the Carolinas, Florida, and Alabama. So he's just an amazing dog and so lucky to have found him.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a special relationship that you two have. And Dr. Sargent, we would love to continue this conversation with you in a separate interview, strictly about you and your dogs and your search tactics on a separate podcast interview sometime very soon, if that's cool with you.
I would be honored to do that and certainly answer any of your questions and any of your listeners' questions and share this incredible, amazing abilities that these dogs have and the things that they do for us. And again, how they help these amazing families and law enforcement officials all over the country.
Yes. And I want to just piggyback on that and say that people who are donating to private investigations for the missing, those funds could possibly go to somebody like Trace or Trace herself if she decides to take on a particular disappearance and use those dogs, the funds that you'd be donating, if she's connected with that case through private investigations for the missing, that's where your money's going. So that is amazing. And I can't think of a better spokesperson for that than you and Taz with his adorable cocked face.
Thank you. And I'd like to add that I do have 2 other search dogs with me. They're all very experienced and have found a number of people. Taz, of course, being a Belgian Malinois. And then I had 2 shepherds, a solid black shepherd named Draco, which many people are familiar with during the Chase Massner case. And then Willow, she's my newest dog. She's about 3 years old. She's a dark sable female German shepherd. And with that, we are available and happy to help anyone literally in the world. I have traveled overseas. Most people are familiar with the Natalie Holloway case. I was involved in that as well. So, have truck, have dog will travel, so to speak. And Taz has been on a plane many times. So if there's any family or law enforcement agency that needs our assistance, we would be honored to help in any way.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors. And now we're back to the program. Cruising along here. Yeah, really, we only have one other group of guests here on the schedule. But Lance, I think we have time for a special guest that was not announced, not scheduled, and we'll try to keep this brief because I know Lou and Greg are waiting. And
it's getting close to their bedtime.
I didn't want to say that, Lance. I didn't want to throw an old joke in there.
It wasn't an old joke. They're busy.
Jason Watts, how are you?
How are you, Jason?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing great over here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And now we understand you worked with Dr. Trace Sargent just recently in a search for Jason Landry. And I just want to preface, Jason Landry is not officially a private investigations for the missing case. But it is a case that we follow closely. Jason has worked on it and has spoken about this case on our show Missing a few times now.
Yeah. So I personally have not worked with Trace Sargent yet, but Jim West, he is our group leader and main search organizer. He actually arranged for Trace to come down with, I believe, Taz. Don't quote me on that, but to come down to Texas and conduct a search for Jason Landry. And it was really awesome to finally see the person behind, who Jim had really been bragging on. So, she was amazing. She came down and searched several locations around Jason Landry's crash site. Unfortunately, did not locate Jason, but we know that, Trace is one of the best. So it was awesome to have her down.
Well, Jason, I would love to hear a little bit about how private investigations for the missing helped you locate Brandon Lawson, your old high school classmate, and you led a search team that did find his remains several years after he went missing. So yeah, if you could just give us a little bit on how private investigations for the missing helped you in your search.
Well, private investigations for the missing really helped me as far as spreading the word and helping me get the word out about Brandon. But I would say while Brandon's case was not officially a private investigations for the missing case, Lou Barry, who is in the chat, he's a private investigator, retired chief of police. I had seen the work that he had done, in the Brianna Maitland case, and I knew that he was, associated with private investigations for the missing. So I reached out to him in 2019 to just for advice and guidance and mentorship, so to speak, and how to proceed. And Lou was great. Thanks to his advice and his coaching, we put a search team on the ground in January of 2022, and we obviously made the discovery that ultimately led to Brandon's recovery, and that could not have been done without Lou Barry and without private investigations for the missing, giving me a platform to help do that. So that's really the way they helped out, and I'm forever appreciative. I had the opportunity to meet Bruce Maitland at the Crime Con in New Orleans. I cannot say enough good things about what he is doing with this nonprofit.
And you have since become a licensed private investigator.
I have, yes.
And you have like a whole search team, like you have a whole crew, you have a whole posse that helps you out now.
I like to look at it as we help each other out, but yes, no, we are all part of a great team. Hallie is in the chat. Hallie is awesome. She makes sure we're all going in the right direction and don't all go off 50 different ways and get lost. Jim West is in the chat. Like I said, he's kind of the main guy behind the keeping the wheel going. There are so many great people on that search team, come from all walks of life, all ages, all over the country. I think the last search we did a few weeks ago, we had around 50 volunteers out there searching, an area where in the near vicinity where Jason went missing. And it's just an awesome effort. I hope you two can come down and join us one time. I think you'll really be blown away.
Yeah, I think we're going to make an effort to get down there to do one of those searches. But to be honest, like you say the word terrain, and I joked about this a few weeks ago, like terrain up here is like some mud and some mosquitoes and some pine trees and some, growth. Down there, terrain is like cacti and wild boar,
rattlesnakes
and scorpions. And we're in Texas, so I mean, you don't know where the property lines are, and you guys are like armed to the teeth. So, I mean,
they may or may not have given me the nickname Yosemite Sam.
Not selling it for us, Jason. Thank you so much for just popping in real quick to chat with us. We did make a joke about Greg and Lou needing to hit the hay before the sun goes down.
I don't want Greg hunting me down. So yeah,
just throw gas station hot dogs at him.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. I love you guys. I love everybody in the chat, and I hope to see you all again very soon.
Awesome.
Thanks,
love you too, man.
Yeah, we love you too. Thank you for joining us here on this live fundraising event. Okay, let's bring in private investigators Lou Barry and Greg Overacker. How's it going, fellas?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing good. Just a couple of things to note. Trace has done a number of searches for us, and she's extremely generous with her time and what she charges us. I mean, she's an unbelievable person, very generous person. The second thing is her Taz is better behaved than Lance.
Oh.
And Greg is back from the gas station, so his stomach should be full.
Greg.
Yeah. He just spent $8.50 at the gas station, so he's good for the week.
What's going on?
Greg, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good over here. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, certainly.
It's been a long time. As private investigators, what does this whole operation mean to you guys?
Well, this was a long time in the coming. Bruce and I used to talk about this a lot. That was a long time of not having somebody like Lou on board, which that was a huge step for us to take. And Bruce deciding he was going to do this, he took the money that was from the reward for Brianna. It times out. You have to put it, and Lou could probably explain this better than I could, but you have to put it in some sort of a special account, and then it times out after a while. You have to start over. So when it timed out, he took the money and he hired an attorney and went through with it. But we had discussed it at length for a long time. And that was based on the fact that we were doing so much work. And when we would have dinner and stuff and talk about it, he's like, I could never have afforded this. I was doing it for expenses and stuff. And we were like, what families that truly need help can afford this? They just can't. So it was a huge thing. And it means a lot to everybody. Of course, we got Lou on board. Now Lou pretty much is the manager. Everything falls to his shoulders, kind of.
Yeah. So Lou, tell us about what you do. I know that you have some help now with, I guess, intakes. I want to say Kathleen, give a shout out to Kathleen, who I believe has been helping with screenings. Tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, Kathleen had been an immense help, taking a lot off my shoulders. Last year we had over 200 requests, so that's like, 2 out of 3 days we'd get a request just about, and it was, that was just the intake part, and then there's the paperwork involved, and if we take a case, there's finding private investigators, then there's managing the private investigators and make sure that they're doing their job, conferring with them, etc. And it just got to be way too much. So Kathleen stepped up and she screens the cases. And if, she's relatively new at it, but she's learned really fast and she knows what automatically to screen out and which ones might deserve a harder look that she ships over to me. We also have 5 case managers now that actually manage the PIs, so that's a huge help. So it's really been beneficial to the organization. It makes everything run a little bit smoother, and no one in any organization should be doing everything for no other reason that only that person has the knowledge, and that's not a good thing. So I think it's really important that that this begun. This idea was Greg's to start with, and then I got involved, and I do all the work. And Greg eats hot dogs. I'm not quite sure how that worked out, but that seems to be the way.
I do what?
Eat hot dogs.
Yeah. That was my COVID world shutdown. No restaurants are open. What am I gonna do? Yeah.
You moved up to gas station sushi. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that moving up?
Yeah.
So I got involved, and every time I think in the Maitland case, and every time I think about, geez, this is a lot of work, and I'm not getting paid for it. I think about the work that Greg did, starting back in 2006 or 7, and still doing the work on a case, and still doesn't get paid for it. So it's hard to to complain to yourself when you look at Greg and see what he's done for nothing over the years. It's really incredible.
Lou, when you and I go up north, just the two of us, I mean, the expenses between gas and food and rooms and paperwork, and it adds up quick. Yeah. It's just the two of us, We go up for a few days or something. It's burn through a lot of cash quick.
It does, yeah.
Can you imagine that on top of paying someone a couple $100 an hour,
It's just not affordable. It's just not I talk to PIs, and some of them quote me rates of $250 an hour, which is crazy.
Well, you talk about like the very tangible expenses. You say gas and food and lodging. Those are things that are just like supposed to happen when you're traveling, but there must be like so many other things that you're just not accounting for. If you have to go out and spend a certain amount of money on flyers, because flyers might be necessary at that particular moment to, maybe start putting out in the neighborhood, or anything really that would be just like this, I don't know, intangible thing, or this, unforeseen thing that you need to pay for. So I want to be clear, when people give their money to this organization, it's not just so that the PIs can eat when they go out to look into these cases. Like, the families might need something that they need to go and pay for, like a Freedom of Information Act request or something like that. Like, there's so many other important, nuanced types of expenses that, no one thinks of unless it's happening in the moment.
Well, you got to keep in mind that, I'm retired, so I get paid whether I'm home or on the road. Greg works for a living. So if he takes a day off to go to Vermont, he's self-employed. He doesn't get paid for that, number one. Number two, just to make things plain, Brianna's case is not a private investigation for the missing case. Bruce made that very clear from day one, that he wanted to keep his own daughter's case out of the organization because he doesn't want to make it look like he's out asking for money to pay for his own daughter's investigation. So I think that's important to note. This has nothing to do with Brianna's case. It's about the cases that his organization funds that have nothing to do with him. Or I shouldn't say nothing to do with him, but nothing to do with his daughter's case. The biggest reason we wanted to come on tonight was that here we are 21 years later, and we're getting still good information. And we just got a tip. Now, without being involved in these cases, it's hard to envision how they evolve sometimes, but it's a learning process, and you're trying to figure out what happened in a case like this. And timing is extremely important. All we know for sure is that she left work at 11:20 p.m., period. That was it. And we had some sightings. First at 12:30, her car was there, then at midnight. But most recently, we got some information that there's no reason to question the credibility whatsoever, that somewhere between 11:30 to 11:45, time unknown, a couple passed the vehicle. The car at that point was there. The headlights were on, the doors were shut. So they talked about it and said, geez, maybe it's a woman who broke down. Maybe she needs help. So they turned around to come back, and they saw what they described, both of them, as a male subject walk in front of the headlights, car door open. According to the male subject, that was the only person in the vehicle. So they were going to stop, but he was concerned because his girlfriend was on that side of the car. So he went down the road, and they were almost struck by a silver-colored, what he believed to be a Honda, coming extremely fast in the other direction. So they turned around very short distance down the road, and they saw the brake lights on this vehicle come on. Now they're fairly certain, although not 100% positive, that this vehicle stopped at the scene and then took off. When they passed the scene again, as far as they know, no one was there. And this car was traveling, again, at an extremely high rate of speed, so much so that they couldn't catch up with it, and they have no idea where it went to. At this point, that vehicle was heading in the direction of St. Albans, Enosburg, that area, heading west.
Away from the Black Lantern?
Yes, that's correct.
So it gets a little confusing, but Lou, tell them how they make each pass, because what happens is they pass the Dutchburn home multiple times. And kind of tell it in that way.
Yeah, the first time they pass was about 11 o'clock, and there was nobody there, no car there.
In which direction are they heading in at that time?
They were heading east.
And I want to just clarify for anybody who is just kind of popping in right now. Maybe they're in the chat. They're not sure who we're talking about. We're talking about Brianna Maitlin, right?
This is correct. Yes.
Okay, we're talking about Brianna Maitlin. All right, continue.
So they're heading east. So in other words, they're heading past the Dutchburn home towards the Black Lantern.
That's correct. And they stopped to make a cell phone call where there was service, and they were invited back to St. Albans to go to a party, and they were debating or a dance or something, whether they should go or not. And then they turned around, decided to go. That's when they passed the vehicle, and they saw the vehicle there with the lights on, doors shut, didn't know who or anybody was there, if anybody was there. So they turned around short distance up the road and decided to come back to see if it was a young female that perhaps might need help or something. And that's when, on the way back, they saw this male, what they describe as a male subject, walk in front of the headlights.
So that's the third pass.
Yes.
That's the third pass past
That's the third pass, yeah. And the door opened. And that's when they were almost struck by this other vehicle. So they turned around again to go back and saw the taillights, the brake lights come on, and believe the vehicle stopped. And by the time they got there, which was, you're talking less than 2 minutes, the vehicle was gone. No one was there that they saw. And the door was open, the lights were on, and that was it. They never caught up with the vehicle. And that was basically their story. And it changes our theory again. Greg, you want to get into that a little bit?
Greg, before you do, can you just describe the vehicle again?
The vehicle that almost struck them?
Yeah.
It was a late 90s, early 2000s gray or silver Honda. And this is all based upon a very fleeting image of this vehicle coming towards them and passing them. So how accurate it is, he was the witness was pretty adamant, but I don't know.
Was it a Honda pickup or a Honda Civic or?
No, it was a Honda Civic.
Honda Civic, okay.
Type, yeah.
So they described him as a tall, stocky man, which I always thought stocky meant short and stout, but apparently I'm wrong. Tall, stocky man standing in the headlights, and he's actually obscuring his face, as though he just didn't want them to see him. They
Standing in the headlights of Brianna's
car, yeah.
walking in front of it. He had a black hoodie on, and he turned his face to the side and put his hand up when they passed.
So to not be seen?
Presumably.
Speculation, yeah.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. Just real quick, I know that there was Brianna's boyfriend who, or ex-boyfriend at the time, I guess, who shut one of the doors that evening. Are we saying this is not him?
No, it's not.
No, this would not have been him. It was
him.
Too early. And that individual, unfortunately, who's deceased now, has given so many versions of that story over the years that it's very difficult to put any credence into any one particular story.
So on that pass, when they're coming past and they see him, so this is a boyfriend-girlfriend couple. Who are still together today. She's now closest to the car. They were going to stop, and he felt that it was sketchy. And she's vulnerable because she's near that side of the road. So they decide not to stop, and they continue on. They slow down and then they continue on. As they go past the Dutchburn home, this car comes at them and almost hits them. And they said he was going, rapidly towards them. So she turned around in her seat and saw, as they got up the road, and saw him hammer the brakes. So they're assuming he stopped. They go, is it to the covered bridge, Lou?
Yes.
Yeah, they go. So we know how far it is, and it's literally minutes for them to turn around there and come back. And when they come back, the man at the car they can't see him anywhere. So they're making a pretty good assumption that he got in the car and left. Now, one of the things that I think the female said was that Brianna wasn't there. She had no way of knowing that. I think what she was basing that on is the man appeared to be alone. He didn't look like he was appearing to contain anybody or anything like that.
However, if their timing is accurate and that silver car did stop and pick up the male subject, if they also took Brianna, especially if she was struggling or even not struggling, unconscious or whatever, it's going to take a period of time to get another person from one vehicle into that. We don't think there was time enough.
Yeah.
So we're now thinking that perhaps whatever happened between the Dutchburn house and Black Lantern, or the Black Lantern and the Dutchburn house. And that vehicle was dumped there.
They must have had some sort of a contact with her in between those 2 points, so, when you start thinking about somebody doing this to Brianna, no one pulled up to her that late at night when she's leaving the Black Lantern and saw her from their car and said, "There's a girl alone in a car. I'm going to, abduct her," or whatever. That can't be how that happened. I mean, they wouldn't even know who it was in the car. Somebody had to be waiting, which makes sense. I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to sit there and wait. Now you rethink, okay, if there's two men involved, with somebody driving the car and somebody at the Dutchburn home, did that person get into the backseat of her car? I mean, that was a stowaway theory, was a theory that had been around for years. And so it's at least plausible now. It's in play, and her car was a big old boat, and she probably never locked the doors.
Got in her car at, like, the Black Lantern.
Yeah. So that was a theory that was always around. And, in my book, I kind of talked about that. And I said, that road, you're traveling on that road, you're doing 50. Would be normal speed. To pop up from someone's back seat and give them a heart attack, you're kind of at the will of them driving off the road, having an accident or whatever, but it's doable. It can happen. Something obviously did happen there at the Dutchburn home, or it could be something different. It could have been him alone taking it up there to try to hide the vehicle or something. But it would seem as though he knew that this other car was coming to pick him up. He's in conjunction with that other car.
Okay. Diane asked a question here just to clear up any confusion. Is this the skier?
Who's the skier?
The witnesses?
I think that's what she's asking.
No.
Yeah.
The world travelers, probably.
No,
exactly.
No. This
right,
is,
because that was like hours later.
Yeah, that's at 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
No, they were had gone out to dinner.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it had nothing to do with anything. And one of the things over the years we discounted was the person in the back seat theory, because we felt, okay, well, how did they get out of there? They didn't have a vehicle. Well, now all of a sudden, there's that strong possibility that there was another vehicle that we were before this it was unknown to us.
Was there any investigation done at the Black Lantern parking lot in the little area where employees park their car?
Investigating relative,
like any sort of like disturbances, any sort of signs of like a struggle there or something?
At the Black Lantern?
Yeah.
No, Bruce went to get the phone records 9 days after she disappeared, and the police hadn't even been there to question anybody yet.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well,
that's in the book. Yeah, that's horrifying.
Did anybody ever like comment that they heard some sort of yelling or anything around the Black Lantern?
No, if you look at the pictures of the Black Lantern, there's a parking lot there. It's very intimate because it's so small and it's such a small neighborhood and whatever. I mean, if you were looking out the window at night, you would see what was going on. But if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't know. I mean, somebody could go over and get in their back seat and lay down. That car, the seats were like couches. They're so big. I mean, you could get in there and lay on the floor. And if she doesn't specifically look in her back seat, she's never going to see somebody back there. So I mean, it's feasible. It's workable,
Especially if they're wearing a black hoodie.
Yeah. To your point, Lance, also, don't forget, this is 2004 in a very small town in Vermont. People were not abducted regularly. So initially, okay, maybe there were mistakes made at the scene, and the police are the first ones to admit it. But they're also understandable mistakes. Greg recently talked to a law enforcement officer who said car was off the road at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. Happened all the time. Happens all the time up there, right?
I need to talk to this person again, and I'll elaborate more if we talk again about it. But for now, it was a very short conversation. But he said he was on duty that night, and he heard the calls coming in about the car being there. We've never heard that before. That law enforcement was getting calls about Brianna's car that night, and through the night. Now, I said, what? And he said, look, we find cars all the time. And, when Lou says this and tells me this, I believe him. But I'm like, it seems so odd. It's just hard to register that in your head that you don't stop and find out what is going on. He said, we would take down plates and make a note of it and come back later. He goes, because it happens all the time. And he goes, 99.9% of the time, it's just somebody's had too much to drink. They don't want to talk to you. They'll be in the next day to get their car. And, that's their right or whatever. But he really made it a point to say that was a really common thing.
And also note that the fact that law enforcement got calls is not to any specific location. In other words, it wasn't like the state police got calls or the local police. There weren't any local police, but so to say law enforcement did, this is a general statement where one call may come into a certain location and the other ones aren't even aware of it.
Yeah. Well, we're blowing up here with questions. Just fire a quick one to you, a couple of quick ones. Lilith is asking if is there any camera surveillance of her getting in her car? And then Tommy asked, did she have any acquaintances that lived near the Lantern or the Dutch Burn?
So there's no surveillance.
No cameras whatsoever.
I think Jared is asking about, the question asker is asking about someone walking distance.
There's not a lot of walking distance between the Lantern. We are looking into the fact that there's a residence where there was some connection, but that may or may not be relevant. I think that's most likely we ruled out that it is, but it's really yet to be.
That's walkable, right, Lou?
That is walkable. Yes.
Yeah. And that was really intriguing for a few reasons, but we're not so sure now.
Okay. So what about acquaintances that live near the Lantern or the Dutch Burn? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez, guys.
Wow, guys. Yeah. So how does this change, the work that you guys are doing on the case?
Well,
Well,
The one thing that we wanted to bring up, I've got a lot of really bad shit to say about some people that I'm not going to do. But
thank you for that.
yeah. Well, one thing that I think is important for everybody to realize, because, there's a lot of people that are really invested in Brianna and Maura's case too, Maura Murray's. It's awesome to see that. It's a really great community. And they discuss it at length, especially Maura's on her Facebook pages and stuff. But one thing that Lou and I have discussed a lot lately is that the names that kind of get thrown out there as to people who are interesting, let's say, maybe not people's of interest. I don't know if that's how you could qualify them. But understand something, that there are people that aren't public knowledge that are far more interesting than those people. So when you hear, and I don't even want to say their names, but you hear CM, which anybody in Maura's community will understand who that is. There are people that are far more interesting than he is, and it's unfortunate that we can't make him public, but just keep that in mind. It's good to know, and it's also something that's going to come up is why these people didn't come forward sooner, and that can be talked at length. This is kind of like the episode of Seinfeld when Jerry asks Kramer, if I murdered someone, would you tell me? And he goes, yup. A lot of us are that way. If I knew something, I would immediately go to the police. There are people that don't, and it's hard to wrap your head around, but I promise you they have the reasons. And I would say that their reasons were pretty good. Wouldn't you, Lou? I mean, fairly human reasons.
Understandable, certainly.
Yeah.
So Amanda asks, are you able to get records regarding who owned a Honda of that make during that time?
No.
Tried.
We tried, the state police tried, and they're not available.
If you have a person's name, can you look that, like if you have someone that you think it could be, could you look through those people's records and try to find some kind of car that fits that description? Maybe,
and we've checked all that we can check, and there's been nothing I don't know how many checks have we made, Greg, about people that have been named, and just nothing matches.
That gets a little sketchy too, right, Lou? Because the witnesses describe it as a gray or silver or light blue. It's at night, it's late, Honda, and they kind of describe it. And I think he was pretty positive of what he thought it was. But, a lot of cars look alike. And you'll notice that, like now I drive a small SUV and I go out in a parking lot. They all look at the same. It's like all these different car manufacturers get together and go, what shape vehicle are we going to make this, and they all make ones that look exactly the same. So there was cars there that would resemble those at that time too. So it could be mistaken. So then you don't know what you're looking for, kind of. But he was pretty certain.
Yeah, but even like at the time, you don't know something bad's gonna happen or has happened, and you're not categorizing it in your brain as something important on that level that you need to like fully describe to somebody else. Right. And even if you try to do that, you're going to forget it. Like it's just the way the brain works. But I think knowing like around a Honda Civic is like very good. Like, that's very good. But I will say, to Amanda's question, if, you're able to get records on who owned a Honda at that time, like if you guys can't do that, then like that's saying something. If the two of you aren't able to do that with the people that you work with and the connections and the state police, like what does that tell you though? Like, is it not that car? Was it not like registered? Was it a junker that they pulled from somewhere? Like, what's your theory on that?
We don't know what year. We don't know what color. We don't know what state it might have been registered in. Was it owned by the person? Was it borrowed? Was it one of the individual's girlfriends?
Or country? It could have been from Canada.
Yeah. I mean, if I wanted your vehicle history, I can do that. And it may, I'm not sure how far back it would go, but it would give you a history of every vehicle you ever owned. But if you just shoot it out there as who owned this type of vehicle in that part of the state in that year, that's not a thing.
Greg, they do it all the time in the movies. I see it.
Yeah, they do it all the time in the movies.
If we were to identify, or the state police were to identify a strong person of interest, and they happen to drive or be associated with a vehicle like that, that's strong circumstantial evidence, but it's still only circumstantial evidence. It means, nobody got a plate number. That's all we know about the vehicle.
So they actually kind of semi-pursued the car afterwards.
Yeah, he did. He couldn't catch up with it. Yeah, he tried to.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
He said they were going 65 plus and he couldn't catch it.
The person knew that they were being pursued.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or suspected they might be, yeah.
Yeah, they must have been going much faster. And those are small, really rural roads.
Well, I'm sure if they saw the brake lights come on and the other car saw them turn around, that would only make sense. Because I'm sure they're looking in their mirror and all of a sudden, oh man, they're coming after us, and they disappeared.
So whatever happened there, he knows that other car's coming to pick him up. So whether that other car knew he was at the Dutchburn home or not, we don't know. But here he's out in front of the vehicle, and when she turns around and looks in the rear view and sees him hammering on his brakes, he's probably out there, here I am, or something to that effect. And then he gets in the car and they're gone. And they do the loop right there. It's, what is it, Lou? A couple tenths of a mile down the road?
Yeah, if that, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes 2 minutes up and
turns
back.
Around, comes back, and takes off after him.
That's our theory today. Information could come in tomorrow, which totally blows us out of the water. That's the thing about an investigation. And how many times have we changed our theories over the last 10 years or whatever, Greg?
Yeah. To initially hear this, after, spending all this time with Lou and saying we need one thing to sink our teeth into, one thread to pull on, and then someone tells us, I saw someone, I laid eyes on someone standing in front of Brianna's car in that literally short time frame. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. That's it. That someone saw someone there, a man there. So whether it's going to lead us further, but we're hoping that this, and the public knowledge of it, will take it further.
Well, that's it.
Well, it's out there now.
21 years later, we got this tip. We just got another one last week based on the chat about us being on the show, if I'm not mistaken. And then
no kidding,
we had gotten another one that may or may not have any validity to it about, a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks. So the information, there's still information out there.
I did a podcast with a guy and he lied to me. It's a long story and I don't know if I want to go into it now. At some point I will. But he's adamant in his podcasts that rewards don't solve anything, that rewards don't pay off, and maybe statistically, he statistics can be misleading and situations have nuance to them. He's basically saying no one pays it out and says, here's your payment, thank you for your tip, and it solved this case. But this tip came after the reward was offered for Brianna, and they said, we don't want any money.
Oh, that's interesting. Here's
the tip, and we hope it helps you, but we don't want a thing. So that helped. They said, we sat down, we talked about it, and it was time, and we can come forward, and we jogged our memories about a few things, and they came forward. So it does help.
Well, guys, yeah, this has been kind of a bit of a bombshell at the end of this evening here. Would love to catch up with you guys on a full episode sometime.
Yeah, let's do that.
If we can, that would be fantastic. And talk about all these scenarios and this new lead. But thank you both so much for joining us here tonight, and thank you everyone who's listening, who's watching, who's donating. We appreciate every moment of your attention on this, and just want to give a big thanks to all of our guests here tonight: Julie Murray, Bobby Taghavi, Dr. Trace Sargent, and you guys, Lou, Barry, and Greg Overacker, these wonderful private investigators. This is a great organization, and I hope we get as many donations as we possibly can. Very honored to be a part of this nonprofit and to be hosting this fundraiser tonight.
Tim, can I make one last comment?
Of course.
Absolutely. Thanks to Julie and Attorney Taghavi and Dr. Sargent for for being here, giving up their evening just to help us out. It's really appreciated. And Lance, I've been called many, many things in my career, and a teddy bear has never been one of them, just for info.
I mean, I've heard numerous people, maybe they don't say it to your face, but I've heard numerous people use teddy bear.
They've said a lot to my face, and that's one of the nicest ones that's been.
Years ago, that would have got you thrown in the back of a cruiser.
Thank goodness I'm about 105 miles away from Lou right now.
Well, I know a dog that can find you. But thank you guys too, really, for hosting this. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, it is our pleasure. We love doing this, and especially for a good purpose, it makes it even more fun. So thank you guys. Thanks to everyone listening, watching. We really appreciate all the participation tonight and with this nonprofit.
And the donations don't have to end tonight. If you donated, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. But if it comes up in conversation with family or friends or whatever over the weekend, and you're like, you know what, I just happened upon this thing on YouTube and I just discovered this organization, or if you know somebody who's in a similar situation who needs this help, again, $2, $5, $10, whatever. If you just spread the word, a little goes a long way.